عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا مولانا محمد وآله وسلم. الرب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير بإسماعيل يا خير الرحمن. ربنا زدنا علما وارزقنا فهما. In the name of Allah, the most gracious and most merciful is He. We send abundant blessings and salutations on the last and kind Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most mercy and to make it easy for us and to make it difficult. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most mercy to grant us all knowledge, to grant us all understanding. Ameen. Ameen. Inshallah ta'ala, we're willing, the most I can see, we will be continuing our topic of discussion, which is the Fiqh of Adhaan and the Fiqh of Salaah. And we will continue the subject matter on Arkaan of Salaah, the pillars of prayer. So, when we learn as growing up, most of us we learn that there are 6 pillars of prayer. Some may learn that there are 5 pillars of prayer, 7 pillars of prayer. For example, the standing, the bowing, the prostration, the recitation of Quran, Khuruj bi-Sunni, which is to give the salam to come out of the last rakat, and also the last sitting. Remember, as previously mentioned, that 3 of these are compulsory, but it is a condition in entering the Salah and throughout the Salah. Okay, remember this. So mainly there are 4 main pillars of Salah, okay, which is the standing position in the prayer, the recitation of Quran, and the bowing and prostration. These are the 4 main pillars in prayer. The rest is just takbir tahrima, okay, is to raise the hands up to the elbow. Okay, this is compulsory as well to say the takbir Allahu Akbar. Okay, but raising the hands is sunnah, which we'll also mention inshallah. Okay, so this is compulsory to do. This is where some people recommend and put it as a pillar of salah. Okay. But it's not necessarily a pillar. Understand this? Okay? The reason why some people put it as a pillar is not to get mixed up. Because some of the Hanafis, among the Hanafi scholars, they make this as wajib. Okay? Meaning lazim, it's essential to do. Okay? And the next is the salam. So the first one is wajib to give the salam itself. And this is why some have put it as a pillar of salah as well. But they are not necessarily pillars, but they are conditions in the beginning of the salah and throughout the salah. You understand the reason why they put the pillar. So the 4 main pillars, inshallah, we will write here. So these are the 4 main pillars, which is standing, in prayer. And later on we'll also mention, for those who cannot stand, they will sit. Okay, and those who cannot sit, they will lay down. But later on we'll mention the reason why a person can sit or why a person can lay down. Okay, and this is very important as well. So sometimes people, you will find them for the 2 nafil, sometimes they will sit and perform the 2 nafil, and we'll explain that as well. Okay? So the first is standing in prayer. Okay? The second is the ruku, which is the bowing. And the third is the recitation of Quran. The 4th is the sajda. these are the four main pillars in your salah. So if any one of them are missed, that means you have to make up your salah. You have to repeat it. Okay? So the remainder are conditions, some of which validate the entrance into prayer, and these are observed through the prayer, such as purity from filth, covering one's nakedness, facing Qibla, the arrival of the time, etc., which we mentioned in the previous class. So all of these are known to be the three conditions of the prayer. Okay? Intention, the opening takbir, while other conditions validate the continuance of the prayer, such as recitation of Quran while standing, to delay prostration until one has performed the bowing, and to be awake and conscious. Therefore, there are four pillars of prayer, and anything besides this is either wajib or sunnah, according to the Hanafi madhab. Okay? So one of the things which is connected to the conditions of prayer is that the person must be mindful of what he is performing on. For example, nowadays, alhamdulillah, we have masajid, our places of worship. And in these places of worship, there are carpets. And some of the carpets, some are softer, some are firmer than the rest. But remember, when going for the prostration and going for the sajda, both the nose and the forehead must touch the floor firmly. The palms must be facing towards the direction of the Qibla, and it must be spaced out. Okay, for example, meaning when for sajda, prostration, when the tip of the forehead and your head must place on the ground itself, your hand must be spaced from the face itself, this direction. So not too further and not too in, where your face hands to be touching your face. So it must be a little way out, pressing. Okay, and the fingers facing towards the Qibla. Okay. And one of the things as well, when covering one's aura, okay, one's private parts, which is for the males above the navel to below the knee, and for the women, the entire body except in the face, their hands and their feet. Okay? So one of the things you must remember here when performing salah as male, okay, is that if 1/4 of any limb from the private area, the aura, is exposed, it prevents the validity of prayer. Okay? If 1/4 of your nakedness is shown whilst performing the prayer, then therefore the prayer becomes invalid. Okay? So what does that mean? It means that the knees are part of the thighs and the ankle of the woman is part of her shin. Okay? So the woman's hair is regarded as separate from her head, and so are her hanging breasts. Likewise, a man's penis is deep in limb as well as his scrotum. All are regarded as individual limbs. Okay, so all of this are regarded as different parts of the body. Okay? The area between the navel and the pubic bone is also one limb. Okay, so you know what is your pubic bone? Okay, in the back. Okay, so that is part of the navel because it is lower than the navel area, even though it is in the back. Right? So for example, if 1/4 of a person's thigh is exposed, then prayer is not correct because the thigh is the limb for the private area. Okay, so you understand that. So meaning they say that if 1/4 of a person's private part is exposed during the prayer, then the prayer becomes invalid. Alright, so therefore you have to repeat the prayer. So for example, they're mentioning the limbs of the body. For a woman, the ears is part of her aura, is connected to her head. Okay, because that part must be covered. You know, nowadays, due to certain fashions, and Allah knows best, you know, women wear the hijab and the ear show and they show the earring, etc. And sometimes they wear the hijab and the neck show, and all of this is considered part of a woman's aura or part of their nakedness. Okay? Likewise for a man, above his navel to below his knee. So if his part of his thigh shows, and sometimes some people they wear 3/4, and even though they wear 3/4, they think it reach under the knee. But when they go into sajda, it raises up. Yeah. The knee becomes shown. And according to the Hanafi method, a quarter of that is part of your thigh. Because your knee will be considered part of your thigh. That's what they're showing. So a quarter of that is shown, and therefore that makes the invalidity of prayer. And likewise, sometimes when you come to Jummah, I don't know if you all know this, because this is lack of knowledge. When some of them, the young boys as well, and even older men, they will come with a shirt or a t-shirt or a jersey, and the jerseys are a little fitted, or the jerseys are a little short. Okay, so for example, when they go into ruku, the bowing position, what happens? The t-shirt rails up. And according to the Hanafi madhab, is that if quarter of the body show, meaning the bone, okay, that part of the body show, and therefore that breaks the invalidity of the prayer. Okay, so this is why it's important to understand this. So now you thinking, you coming to Salah, Alhamdulillah, you thinking that, oh, I establish my Jummah Salah, I establish my Asr Salah, I establish my Maghrib Salah. But not knowing when your t-shirt railed up, or for a woman, she didn't tie her scarf properly, her hair will end up showing. Okay, or for example, part of her shin end up showing. So all of that makes the salah become invalid. And now you have to perform that salah. And you thinking you go home that you perform Jummah Salah, you perform Eid Salah, you perform this salah that we come for. Okay, but Allah knows best and Allah is all merciful. And this is why when you come to salah, we always mention to dress your best. To make sure that your entire body is covered where it should be covered. Okay? Likewise, if there are a few separate portions exposed in various places of the private area, and the sum total of these exposed places equals 1/4 of the smallest limb which is uncovered, prayer is deemed invalid as well. So what does that mean? It means, for example, nowadays as well, you have to bring it to the modern era. So, young boys, they have these jeans. And sometimes these jeans have little cuts and holes in it. Yeah. And likewise, the women also wear it as well, and then the cuts and stuff, and the skin show. So, if it is showing, and part of that is the thighs, that the boy wearing his jeans and have a cut there, or he have a cut by his crotch. Sometimes he doesn't know, and that's why he must watch it before he come. And it's important. So, if they have a cut here, small, and he have a next cut on this side, small, okay, and he's wearing a t-shirt, there a small rip there as well. So if all of these clothing that he's wearing, and it comes up to the amount of 1/4 of part of his limb, for example, that means part of his limb can be one of his scrotum, or part of his limb can be the size of his navel, or part of his limb will be the size of his thigh. So if it becomes 1/4 of all those places where it should be covered, then therefore his salah will become invalid. Okay, you understand that? Mm-hmm. But if it does not equal 1/4, then the prayer remains sound. So long if you have holes, for example, a man might have a hole in his t-shirt, but there's only one small hole, okay, and it's hanging at the ending of his navel, that's fine. Okay, so long it does not equate to 1/4 of part of his limb. Okay? And one of the things we must remember is that one of the conditions was when facing the Qibla, the direction of prayer. Okay, so remember this was the precondition for a person to perform their prayer, to face the direction of the Qibla, meaning the direction of the Kaaba. So there are some things regarding this as well that a person must know. So if one does not know the direction of prayer and there is no one to inform him about it, but alhamdulillah, now we live again in certain times where the area where we're supposed to turn to is already built in our masjid. Some of us already know it as well, so we know when we go, we have to perform to this east direction, in this island of Trinidad. So it's already known. If, for example, someone is traveling, okay, and you don't know where the direction is. And for example, if you go to Costa Rica, if you don't know Spanish, you don't know the direction, there's no masjid there. So what are you going to do? You have to perform the salah, so it's compulsory. Okay, so in that case, you have to look for the direction of the Qibla. So what must you do when looking for the direction of the Qibla? Okay? So if one does not know the direction of prayer and there is no one to inform him about it, Now is a prayer niche within the mihrab, like how we have in our masjid. Okay? Then one must investigate. Okay? So now you must do your own internal investigation, searching for the direction of the Qibla. Meaning using personal reasoning and other evidences. If he later learns that he was incorrect, he is not required to repeat the prayer. Okay? So for example now, you did your own investigation, your own legal opinion, you went to a place, you didn't know the direction the Qibla was, you didn't have Muslim Pro on your phone, you don't know, but there's all of these things, it helps. You never had it, you never searched, and you started to think, the sun rising here, you think for yourself. Then you perform your Salat al-Asr. But then when you complete your Salat al-Asr now, then you realize that the direction was wrong. Okay? So the prayer will be valid still. Okay? So at that moment, the prayer will still be valid. But now, if you search for the place of direction, okay, for the Qibla, and you started your prayer, and then someone came from behind, and he was also reluctant to be a Muslim. And then he was shouted out, you're performing in the wrong direction. Okay? So at that moment, you will have to turn to the direction where it is. Okay? And the prayer will be still valid. Right? So now, in the case, in the scenario now of a person who performs his prayer, okay, and then he begins his Salah, and then he prayed in the direction where it was wrong, and then he completes the Salah, and then someone comes and informs him that he performed in the wrong direction. His prayer will still be valid. Okay? But if he knew Adhaan before, and he overheard someone perhaps tell him in the wrong direction, and he did nothing and continued Salah, then the Salah will be invalid. Okay? Because then you got awareness, you got the knowledge of the correct direction. And the reason for this is because remember, performing direction towards the Kaaba is a precondition towards your prayer. Okay? And likewise, if a person begins his Salah with no investigation at all, okay, he just said to himself, I travel, and he said to himself, Allah is everywhere. And people like that, Allah is everywhere. I perform my Salah. He just perform his Salah without any investigation. He just perform where he thinks he wants to perform. So he performs it. So after the completion of the prayer, he discovers that he was correct. Okay? So for that instance, he said to himself, Allah is everywhere, he just perform. But when he performs Salah and then he finishes, comes to his realization, comes to his knowledge that he actually performed in the correct direction. Alright? So the prayer will be valid. Okay? But now, if he finds out during the prayer that he's facing the correction, the prayer is nullified. Okay? So now, if he finds out during the prayer that he was facing the correct direction, then the prayer becomes invalid. Why? Because one of the things is certainty. Okay? He had certainty that he was performing in the correct direction. Okay? So that's why when at the ending of the prayer becomes valid. But now, whilst in the prayer, the certainty was removed by someone announcing to him and mentioning to him that he was performing in the wrong direction. So now with that, the certainty was removed. Okay, he become doubtful. He still continued the prayer in that direction. And this is why the prayer becomes invalid. Therefore, you have to repeat it. Okay? And one of the things as well, for example, this is doing, now alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, we don't have such things in our era. Okay? Because long ago, many people never had electricity. We used to use flambeau, sometimes we never had flambeau. And sometimes in the night, there are some nights that will be very dark. Alright? So in those times, right, for example, if it happened, so if many people use personal reason, they won't investigate it, right? The direction of the prayer due to total darkness, and it results in many people facing different directions, okay, because they are unaware of the Imam's situation with respect to what direction he is facing. Okay, meaning what? There was a dark night. There is no light, there is no electricity, etc. In a place where you can't see anyone properly. And you all form the prayer for Salah to the Isha. Okay? So then everyone, for example, all of us here, then we said to ourselves, let us do our own personal reason and look for the direction of the Qibla. Okay? So all of us first look for our own personal reason, searching for the direction of the Qibla. And then the Imam found the direction of the Qibla. So he started the prayer. Okay? And then everyone started the prayer with him. Okay? So at that moment now, for example, someone from amongst them ended up straying and going in front of the Imam until in a different direction. Okay? Then his prayer will be invalid. Okay? Why? Because the Imam already started the prayer in that direction. Okay? And he went forward and he went against the Imam. Okay? So this is why his prayer will be invalid. Okay? So if many people use personal reasoning, investigate the direction of prayer due to total darkness, okay? And it results in many people facing different directions because they are unaware of the Imam's situation, meaning the Imam's position. With respect to what direction he is facing, then the prayer is valid. So now if everyone ends up facing different paths because of the darkness of the night, and the Imam is leading the Salah, and then end up not facing the direction of the Imam, some facing this side, some facing this side, some facing that side. As long as that moment, the prayer will be valid. But if someone in the darkness of the night ends up proceeding in front of the Imam now, then his prayer will be invalid. Okay? So with regards to one of the things of standing position. And remember, this is a pillar of Islam. So when a person stands for his prayer, this is very important as well, especially the young ones. Okay? So when you stand for prayer and you have the ability to stand for prayer, when you make the takbir al-tahrima, the opening Allahu Akbar, okay? So when you make the opening Allahu Akbar, you will tie your hands below your navel. So according to Imam Abu Hanifa, you will tie your hands with the right palm of the hand above the left, or on the left below the navel, like this. So you do Allahu Akbar, Takbir Tahrima, the opening Allahu Akbar. Then you put your left hand below the navel and your right hand above your left hand. And the thumb and the pinky finger will be wrapped around the wrist. And the 3 fingers will be placed upon here. Okay, and this will be below the navel, according to the Hanafi method. And then you will stay in a position without moving. Okay, you have to be still for a while. If a person starts his takbir, then he places his hand below the navel, and then he moves about. As soon as he done that, the prayer becomes invalid. Because one of the conditions of the prayer in standing position, you have to be still for a moment. You cannot move. So as soon as you do so, and you tie your hands and make it around the wrist, you cannot move for a moment. Once you did that and you start to move, and you scratch your head, Salah is invalid. And many times I see many of us, we do this. When we start to shake and move. So you have to be still for a moment in the qiyam position, the standing position. When you do Allahu Akbar, tie your hands, pinky finger around and thumb, 3 below the navel. You stand for a moment. So once you stand for the moment, then you recite your surah or whatever. If you're performing behind an imam, then you remain silent, as mentioned in the previous class, according to the Hanafi madhab, Hanafi school of thought. So now at that state, you recite Quran. And if you move now while reciting the Quran and your head is scratching and mosquitoes come and bite you and you hit it, then it's fine. Because you were still for a moment in your standing position. Okay, remember this. So now sometimes we find in our communities that in our standing position there will be people come and they'll put their foot out and they'll do so. Allahu Akbar. So now remember there are 4 schools of thought. And then they are also known as the Ghayr Muqallids, who don't follow any school. But many and the majority of people who claim to be Ghayr Muqallids, they also follow school. And they follow the school of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And the thought or the aqidah or the creed of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, which is known as Athari. Okay? So sometimes you will find they coming as well. They will stand and raise their hands to the chest. This is allowed according to the Hanbali madhab and also the Shafi'i madhab. Okay, so nothing wrong. So when they do so as well, and they'll place it above the navel. Okay. Likewise, the thumb and the pinky finger must also be wrapped around, but they must be placed above the navel. So the Hanafis below the navel, for the Hanbalis and the Shafis above the navel. Sometimes you find some people unaware, thinking they've seen someone and they place it highlighters and do like this. This is wrong. This, according to the Hanbali madhab and the Shafi madhab, is above the navel, right here. Not on the chest, not on the bosom. The bosom is for the woman, okay, where they place their hands without wrapping. For the females, without wrapping, it's the palm of the hand above the left hand. Finish, like this, upon the bosoms. Closer to the left side breast, okay? So you place it for the females, okay? And sometimes as well you will find in the Maliki madhab, when they do takbir al-tahrima, they will have their hands at the side. They won't tie their hands in the Maliki madhab. So you must remember this. So sometimes people will go and they find it strange. Okay? So for the Maliki madhab will be at the side. For the Hanafis, below the navel. For the Shafis and the Hanbalis, above their navel. And they must stay for a moment. Then recite Surah Al-Fatiha and verses of Quran. And in the ruku position, for the males, must be firmly bent, straight along with the head. Okay? And also must stay in a position without moving as well for a moment. If you move as soon as you go down, then it breaks the prayer as well. Okay? So you have to stay for a moment in that position without moving. Okay? So each category, each pillar, standing, the recitation, the ruku and sajda, each of them you have to be for a moment still. Okay? And then after, if you move about, there is no problem. But each position as well, you have 3 movements. Okay? In the Hanafi madhab, each position you have 3 movements. So when you start it, Allahu Akbar, you stay for a moment still, recite the Quran. If you move, you get a mosquito bite, you hit scratch. Like 1 movement there already. So now you start to feel that ache on the side of your cheekbone. It happens. You start to rub it. That's a second movement. So now again, the next mosquito come on the next side. You hit again. That's 3 movements. So now you can't do no more in the standing position. Okay? So if you make a 4th one in the standing position, the salah becomes invalid. Okay? Then you have to start over again. So now if you're going into the ruku, bowing position, you also have 3 movements. The same mosquito come back again. 1 movement. So every time, each position have 3 movements. Okay? So if you break it at each of these movements, and therefore the salah becomes invalid, you have to repeat again. Okay? Right. So we come into that as well, inshallah. And with regards to the positions when standing, okay? So when a person stands and he does his takbir al-tahrima, the opening, Allahu Akbar, his palm of the hands must be facing to the direction of the Qibla. Everything must be facing to the direction of the Qibla. Remember this. Even when bending the toes, Allahu Akbar, up to the earlobe. Up to the earlobe is sunnah, which we will deal with as well. Okay, so takbir al-tahrima is a condition. Some regard it as a wajib element. Okay, so you make it, Allahu Akbar, up to the earlobe. Even if you don't go there and you reach here, it's fine as well. Okay, if you don't want to go up to here, it's fine. So long your hand is facing to the direction of the Qibla. You tie it underneath the navel, around the wrist, above. And when standing, you look where you're going to make prostration, sajda. Okay, your eyes must be focused on the place where you're making prostration, sajda. Okay, so you recite the Quran or whatever. And then when you go into ruku, when your back is straight and is level, for those who are young, okay, remember this. This is for people who are able. If a person is elderly, if a person is old, you don't need to go and make sure his back is straight. So long you are capable, always remember this, if you are capable of bending, then you bend straight. And when bending in the ruku position, your eyes must be facing between your right and your left feet in the middle. Okay, your eyes must be facing there. And when coming back up, your eyes will go back into the spot where you're going to perform sajda. And when into sajda now, your forehead and your nose will be touching the floor, and your eyes will be facing to the direction of your nose, the tip of your nose. Okay? So your eyes will be facing the tip of your nose when in sajda. Okay? But the reason for this is so that you'll be more focused on in the prayer. Okay? This is the reason for these positions and looking where in standing, in bowing and in prostration. Okay? And one more thing as well, if I continue the wajib elements, someone asked the question that sometimes we hear people call it the Adhaan, and then they'll come and call it Iqamah, and they will say Allahu Akbar twice, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah once, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah once, Hayya Salaah once, Hayya Falah once, Iqamah Salaah, Iqamah Salah twice. Okay? So remember, in the Hanafi madhab, in the Hanafi school of thought, it is sunnah, it is recommended to say each of them twice. Okay? Hayya Salah twice, Hayya Falah twice, Iqamah Salah twice, and Allahu Akbar four times. Same like the Adhaan. But in the Shafi madhab and the Hanbali madhab, they are recommended to call once and Allahu Akbar twice. Okay? Some of the hadith as well. But this is why you have to follow school of thought. Remember, some of them you just follow helter-skelter. So many people they follow Ibn Taymiyyah school. But Ibn Taymiyyah, he was also a Hanbali follower and an Athari in Creed. Okay, so you must remember this. So if you follow in Ibn Taymiyyah, then therefore you have to follow the Hanbali school of thought and Athari school of creed and doctrine, beliefs, aqidah. Okay? But one of the things is recommended, and many of the ulama have mentioned this, if you go to a dominated masjid, which is following a Hanafi madhab, okay, then therefore you will do the actions of the Hanafi madhab, the Hanafi school of thought. Okay? So you don't want to, if you know you're following something else and you think that the people might get discouraged from it, then therefore you repeat the adhan and call the Iqamah the way the Hanafi people of that masjid is doing it, because it's dominant over there. Okay? Likewise, when a person goes somewhere else, he will follow the practice of the people. Okay? So if that masjid is dominant and following the Hanafi madhab, then call the Iqamah like how the Hanafi are doing. Okay? So there's nothing wrong in doing so. Okay? That's one of the things we must remember as well. But if someone comes and they call it once, someone calls it the Allahu Akbar twice and the Hayya Salah, Hayya Falah once, it's fine, it's no problem. It's not to run them down and debate with them. In their own opinion, they are correct. But this is why it is very important if a person knows that this masjid is running a Hanafi madhab, then therefore someone from the Hanafi madhab should call Adhaan and call Iqamah as well to safeguard from those type of discussions. Right? So some of the wajib elements of prayer. So what we have discussed, the pillars are compulsory. So if any one of them are missed, you have to repeat the prayer. And with wajib elements now, if anyone is missed, you have to do sajdatul sahw. Okay, prostration of forgetfulness, which we will do as well. Okay. So the first wajib element is Surah Al-Fatiha. Surah Al-Fatiha must be recited in every rakat. First 2 rakats, and if there's 4 rakat, the second 2 as well. Okay, and it also should be recited Quran, 3 verses or 1 long verse. It's wajib. Okay, but according to Imam Abu Hanifa himself, is 1 verse. Okay, but the ruling, the majority of taking upon, is that you recite Surah Al-Fatiha and at least 3 short verses or 1 long verse. Okay, and Surah Al-Fatiha must be recited along with other surahs for those prayers that which must be recited alone, such as Fajr Salah and the Isha Salah and the Maghrib prayer. Okay, Surah Al-Fatiha and the surah must be recited alone. This is wajib. So if you forget this, then therefore you have to make sajdatul sahw. Okay?
Okay, explain sajdatul sahw.
So sajdatul sahw is that if you miss out any of the wajib elements, remember if you miss out any of these, you have to repeat the salah, make it up, start all over again. Okay, for example, you started qiyam and you went straight into sajda. Okay, without any prostration or rules or anything like that. So therefore, you have to start back your salah again. Okay, because you missed the rule, position of rule. Okay, so any of these missed out, you have to repeat the salah. But any of the wajib element that is essential in the prayer, and according to the Hanafi madhab, there are 80, some say 20, some say 70, okay, but those are considered to be wajib, so essential. So in any of these essential acts that are missed out in the prayer, you have to do sajdatul sahw, for prostration of forgetfulness. So if you forget to recite Surah Al-Fatiha in one of the rakat, then therefore you make salam at the ending of the last sitting. Okay, the last, if you perform in 4 rakats, you recite Surah Al-Fatiha alone and the next surah in the first rakat. You recite Surah Al-Fatiha alone and the next surah in the second rakat, and you sit for the second sitting. You come up on the 3rd rakat, and you end up reciting no Surah Al-Fatiha in the 3rd and the 4th rakat. But then you remember you're supposed to recite Surah Al-Fatiha in the 3rd and the 4th. So in the last sitting of the 4th rakat, you will make sajdatul sahw. You say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and then you will make 2 prostrations. Allahu Akbar, come back up. You will say the dua, Allahumma khfirli, Allah forgive me, and then you move back up. Allahu Akbar, Subhana Rabbil A'la, 3 times as well. Come back up. Start at-tahiyyat lillahi again. Durud Ibrahim, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, and then any dua. Then again you make Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay, this is known as sajdatul sahw, meaning the prostration of forgetfulness. Okay. So likewise, it's wajib to recite the surah with the Fatiha in all the rakat of the witr and voluntary prayers as well. So Surah Fatiha must be recited in Fard prayer, voluntary prayer, Sunnah prayer, all the way Surah Fatiha, and the surah must be recited in it. Okay? So only for the Fard prayer, remember this as well, only for the Fard prayer, the compulsory prayers, if there's 4 rakats performing, Surah Fatiha and surah will be recited in the first 2 rakats. The second 2 rakats, only Surah Al-Fatiha. Remember this. Fard prayer, compulsory prayers, if there is 4 or 3, Surah Fatiha and the surah will be recited in the first 2, and Surah Fatiha alone in the remaining. But in the Sunnah prayers, the Nafil prayers, Surah Fatiha and the surah must be recited in all the rakats. You understand that? It is also wajib to recite Fatiha before the surah. So if you start the Surah Al-Baqarah first and then you recite Surah Fatiha, then therefore you have to make up and make sajdatul sahw. Okay. In every rakat, it is wajib to perform the second prostration before switching to another action of the prayer. Okay, so meaning what? When you go into first prostration, you kind of go back up into qiyam. you have to make your second prostration. This is wajib. Okay? So you have to do that before standing back up or going into another position in your prayer. Okay? It is also wajib to place both the nose and forehead on the ground in prostration. Okay, so this is essential. So meaning what? This is also important for us to understand. Your nose and your forehead must touch the floor. So if a person performs a salah and then he just placed his head on the floor and his nose did not touch, then therefore he has to make sajdatul salah. Constitutional forgetfulness. Because his nose did not touch the floor. Likewise, if a person just touches his nose alone on the floor and did not touch his forehead, he has to make sajdatul salah. This was already mentioned as well. It is also necessary wajib to remain motionless for a moment in all the pillars of prayer. The first sitting and the recitation of tashahhud, at-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu, in it is wajib. Okay? So in the first sitting, if you're performing 4 rakat or 3 rakat, the first sitting you will say at-tahiyyatu lillahi and then you go up to the 3rd rakat. So if you miss out this tashahhud at-tahiyyatu lillahi, you have to make sajdatul salah. It is also wajib to recite the tashahhud in the last sitting. So also in the last sitting as well you have to recite at-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu wa tayyibatu. It is also wajib to rise to the 3rd rakat without any delay after reciting the tashahhud. Okay? So here again, this is like sometimes during Salah al-Tarawih as well, when you went to the first rakat and the second rakat you used to come back up. So if you miss the second rakat from coming back up, then therefore you have to make sajdatul salah. Because why? You have to come back up in the second rakat. Likewise, if a person is performing 4 rakats, and in the second rakat he stays there and he did not come back up. So therefore then he remembers, because remember in the second rakat you have to come back up immediately. So as long as you remember, and then he comes back up, at the ending, you have to make sajdatul salah. Okay? It is also wajib to utter the word salam. When you say as-salam, salam itself, you say as-salamu is wajib. Alaykum is sunnah, wa rahmatullah, it is sunnah. Okay? So just to say as-salamu, even if a person says that without saying alaykum wa rahmatullah, the prayer is complete. Okay, so salam is wajib. Okay? At the end of the prayer, don't have the words upon you. Okay? Meaning alaykum. And the supplication of the witr and the additional takbeers of both Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha are wajib. Okay? So meaning what supplication? In the witr, dua qunut. If a person does not know dua qunut, you have to recite a dua. Supplication is wajib in your witr prayer. You have to recite a dua. Okay? It is wajib to specify the words Allahu Akbar for the start of all prayers, not only for the prayers of Eid. Okay? So likewise, you have to know to say Allahu Akbar for all of the prayers. It's wajib to do. So if you don't say Allahu Akbar, Allah for the prayers, or even to yourself, if you're performing by yourself individually, and you just do so. That was in Allah understand. And therefore you have to make sajdatul salah. You have to say verbally Allahu Akbar for all of the position of the prayer, even when going on with the ruku as well. Allahu Akbar. Okay? For all of the position you have to say Allahu Akbar. Except for Sami Allahu liman hamidah. Even if someone says while it's coming up, Allahu Akbar, the prayer will still be valid. Okay? In the second rakat of both the Eid prayers, it is wajib to say Allahu Akbar for the bowing. Okay? Remember in the Eid prayer there are 6 extra takbirat for the Hanafi madhab. Remember before going into the second one, you have to recite 3 takbir first. Right? So in the 4th one, to say Allah for the ruku is wajib, you have to say. Okay? It is wajib to recite Quran aloud in the dawn prayer, the Fajr prayer, as well as in the first 2 rakats of the Maghrib and Isha prayer as well. Okay, you have to recite it aloud. even if they are missed. Okay? So even if you miss your prayer of Fajr, Maghrib and Isha, when waking them up, you have to recite them aloud for them. Okay? Yeah, you have to wajib by yourself as well. But not as God for the next person to hear, for you to hear yourself in a loud voice. Right? Because you make this wajib, essential. Okay? Likewise, it's also wajib to format as well to recite loud for the Jummah prayers. Okay? The 2 rakat for Salatul Jummah. And also the Tarawih prayers and the Witr prayers in Ramadan. Only for Ramadan you recite the surahs of the Fatiha and other surah in the Witr prayers in Ramadan only aloud. But by yourself, you recite it silently. It's wajib. Only in Ramadan time, whilst after the 20 rakats you perform. Remember this. Okay? Likewise, it's also wajib to recite Quran silently for the silent prayers, such as Salatul Dhuhr, Salatul Asr. Okay, recite it softly. If one omits the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha in the first 2 rakats of the Isha prayer, then he is to repeat it aloud in the last 2 rakats with the Fatiha. You understand that? Meaning, if you miss reciting Surah Al-Fatiha aloud, okay, in the first 2 rakats of Salat Al-Isha or Salat Al-Maghrib, okay, then therefore, even if it is 1 rakat, it's Salat Al-Maghrib. In this case, Isha prayer. If you forget to recite it aloud, okay, then therefore you have to recite it aloud in the last 2 rakats of the Isha prayer without the surah. Okay, meaning what? You begin your Salat al-Isha and you start reciting. Perhaps you will recite them by yourself. You start your Salah, Allah, and then you recite it so. Then you start your surah and then you end up reciting it aloud. Likewise, in the second rakat, you did the same thing. And then you realize, oh, you have to recite aloud as well. So then, in those 2 rakats, you have to recite Surah Fatiha aloud. Okay, and then the prayer will also be valid. Okay. Why is this? It's because we must Surah Fatiha to recite in the beginning, loud for the loud prayers is wajib. So you have to make it up in the second 2. So if the Fatiha is not recited in the first 2 rakats, one is not repeated in the last 2 rakats. Okay? Meaning what? If the Fatiha is not recited, okay, for example, now you just recite Quran, but you did not recite Surah Fatiha. Okay? You cannot repeat it in the last 2 rakats because you already missed it. 2 Fatiha in the first 2 rakats. It's never recited at all. Okay? So therefore you have to repeat the Salah. Okay? Inshallah, we'll end here and we'll continue with the Sunnah prayers, inshallah, next week. And the etiquette of prayer and how to perform the prayer, inshallah. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ نستغفر الله ونتوب إليه ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفر الله ونتوب